Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tales of Woe. I am your humble storyteller, Tim, and today it is the final tale of the beginning. In the last session, the group had managed to finally take out the evil wizard Rictavio, retrieve the Apocalypse Stone, and return it to where it needed to be replaced. One of the other things that I'd forgotten to mention in the previous session, however, was Nuru's ring, or the ring that Rick had utilized to get his current body. Now, way back in the tales, where Rick came from was that he was banished from his people and had hidden his soul away in this ring, or he'd been punished and put into this ring. And if anyone was wearing the ring, he could attempt to assert control over them, but only for a limited amount of time and only in limited ways. However, if the person died while wearing the ring and was brought back to life, their soul was also trapped within the ring. It was basically a different variation on a ring of spell storing. Not spell storing, mind protection. Anyway, there it is. So when you die, your soul goes into the ring. And this is how he got his body, is that when Mordenkainen came to assist them during the attack on Strahd way back in the Curse of Strahd storyline, Rick tricked the party by taking over Selena with the phantom hand that he had created for her, going over to Mordenkainen, putting the ring on him while he was near death, swapping souls with him, so Rictavio's body was now inside one of the greatest wizards in the multiverse, and then teleporting away, and that's who they've been chasing this entire time. So after they defeated him, and they'd actually killed Mordenkainen's original body, unfortunately, but they did manage to retrieve the ring. So they had Mordenkainen's soul trapped within the ring, and also Rictavio still trapped within the ring as well. So once they got back to the Equinox, the crashed spaceship, they had restored all of the dimensions back. They got managed to find the original Give inside the portable hole. They were able to restore him back to normal. They were able to depetrify him after he was attacked by the Medusa, and were able to restore his memory, basically level him back up to where he was in terms of game mechanics, by use of the memory chip that had been installed into the evil version of Give. So they were able to basically merge his memories, or update his memories, with the older version of Give. So Give was off recovering, and then while that was all going on, they'd managed to create a clone body for Rick and a clone body for Mordenkainen. But because these bodies, the body for Rick, I should say, was one that was heavily restrained, so he wasn't able to escape. He didn't have any of his spells or equipment or anything like that. So and then Selena spent quite a long time having a nice chat with him, while Mordenkainen was sulking in his magnificent mansion, which he created the door right beside the security office in the center of the Equinox. Wallflower eventually reformed inside the Golthus tree, or the Golthias tree, and no one had bothered to go down there yet because the entire Arboretum area, having been taken over by all of the plants, had sort of freaked them out quite a bit. And so they decided just to leave that area. And then suddenly Wallflower just goes, "Hey guys, I'm back." And it was like, "Oh!" They didn't know what had happened, and they didn't know that she was going to come back. So they were all I think it was actually during a moment where both Selena and Nuru were, having a lamenting moment about the loss of their dear friend, and then suddenly say, "Hey guys, I'm back," and then, "All right, this is weird, but sure, whatever." So, with all that strangeness going on, they had decided that this was the point that they needed to take care of Atropus. And they had no idea really how to do it, but part of getting back Morden Kanan was that he was there basically to be the exposition bot to give them all the information that they require, because he's been around to all the different multiverses. He knows what these things are capable of. He knows all about these sort of things. So he gives them a plan that they need to disrupt the physical aspect of Atropus on the surface of the planet. And so they need to travel to Atropus before it gets any closer to the planet. But because Atropus is aware of what's going on, the planet is speeding up and getting closer and closer and closer to the planet. So it's very much like Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, with the planet coming in to smash into their planet. So. And they know that the surface of Atropus is a place of death, and that they'll basically turn to dust if they get within the surface for any extended period of time. But if they have a death ward placed on them, they will be able to survive there, at least until they drop to 0 hit points. In which case, the death ward will deactivate, and then they will just instantly die. So this is literally a one life situation. There's no healing will also be difficult because it's a negative energy area, but regardless. So they know that it's going to be a very, very tough fight. And so they load up the Serenity once more, their Spelljammer ship. They put basically everything onto them. I think at this point was when Selena finally attuned to the Tarrasque hide armor. So she had the Tarrasque hide armor. Wallflower had her bark skin hide form. Nuru had the spacesuit, the actual suit of power armor. And the other groups all had their different rebreathers so they could exist on the planet's surface. And the fight was on. And so they barreled onto the Serenity and off they went to to battle Atropus. Unfortunately, the tale of the fight isn't really all that exciting, at least in, explaining it, because, I'll put the stats. Here's the stats for the aspect of Atropus. Now, this thing is nasty as hell, because what I did was I took the Atropal from the Tomb of Annihilation and basically grew it up and made it into like a Big Brother variant. So it has all the abilities of the Atropal from the Tomb of Annihilation, but it is also added in on the planet with all these other aspects. So it can bring down asteroids, summon souls and all sorts of things. And so it was a pretty damn tough fight for them. And for the most part, it all went relatively well, because once again, I severely underestimated their ability to do damage. But with the primary attacks that I was doing to them was mostly like screams, hitting them with waves of exhaustion in order to wipe them out. Because if they hit them with the exhaustion, they only have to be hit 6 times and they're automatically dead. There's no coming back from that. And with Give being the absolute combat powerhouse that he was just going hell for leather into this creature, but it still wasn't enough, and eventually he dropped to 0 hit points. The Death Ward pinged him back to 1. He had 1 round of combat in 6 seconds, and then he turned to dust, just like the end of the Avengers. And so that was it. Give was gone, and because he was so close to Atropus when it happened, Atropus consumed his soul as well. So he is perma-gone. So they completely lost Give in this final fight. But when all was said and done, they fought valiantly, they used their abilities brilliantly. The Moonbeam was still kicking the ever-loving crap out of everything that they were dealing with, and they did eventually beat the aspect of Atropus back. They disrupted the form, and when that happens, the entire planet begins to tremble, and then it shoots off back out of the system. And they're still on it. It's like, ah! And they had Mordenkainen. Actually, he hadn't buggered off yet. Actually, I misspoke before. He was actually acting as their Spelljammer pilot to get them there, mostly because if they died, he got a free ship out of it. And he also had the way to dimension jump if things got really bad. So he was sticking around at least for that point of it. And so he manages to keep pace with the planet. He swoops on down. They all fly back up using their various fly spells and other bits and pieces and get back onto the Spelljammer, and they watch as the planet disappears off into the darkness of space. So they had, at this point, saved the planet from certain destruction from a godlike being, but they still had to deal with the Tarrasque. And so that was where the final session was when they were fighting against the Tarrasque. And we'd been building to this for so long. It was not funny, because this had been almost like 2 years of campaign in the making for this fight. And they had all the tools that they needed. They had their equipment out the wazoo. They had the wagon of MacGuffin, which was the device they needed to capture, that they needed to fight it the first time. And they also had, on the back of the Tarrasque, was the original capsule device that Katsuki had created to create the gravity field to keep it in place, which had run out of power. And Nuru at this stage was sort of done with everything. She kind of had a death wish, but not really, because she'd lost so much throughout this campaign. She'd lost her brother, she'd lost her family. For a very short period of time, she lost herself, because it turned out that she was actually a doppelganger. But then that was actually just one of Rick Tavio's games that he was playing with them. So she was really severely psychologically broken by this stage in the campaign, but she'd realized that running away from her responsibility wasn't going to solve anything, and she needed to finally face her destiny and deal with the Tarrasque and actually go through with the ceremony. And so what they came up with as a plan is they were going to swoop down with their Spelljammer vessel. They had the wagon of MacGuffin in the cargo hold. They were literally going to do a combat drop. Swoop in, drop the wagon, everyone bails out onto the wagon and does all their flying things. The Spelljammer stays at a distance, lobbing magical ballista shots at it with the help of the various constructs from the Equinox. The Mordenkainen was staying inside the Spelljammer to pilot it again, because if they die, he gets a free ship. And everyone else was either riding around on the wagon. Wallflower had actually resurrected the dead Froghemoth from inside of the Arboretum area with the help of the Golthias tree, and so she had herself a Froghemoth mount that she was using to fight against the Tarrasque. So this was an epic fight. Here's some pictures, I'll put them up so you guys can see what was actually going on. And also, if you go way back, the very first episode ever on this channel was actually, I think, like the 4-hour-long fight against the Tarrasque, and it was epic. So the idea behind the fight with the wagon of MacGuffin was that the wagon was effectively a kinetic capacitor. So it had the Staff of Light, the shield, the vehicle itself, and the mount. The mount allowed it to keep moving. The wagon itself was just the mount, the housing. The shield was a kinetic absorption device. So all kinetic force that was put against the wagon was absorbed by this shield. but it had to go somewhere. So the shield itself would not work on its own, and that's where the staff was. The staff was mounted atop the shield, and then every time the Tarrasque would bite or wail into the wagon, the shield would absorb the energy of it and fire that back as a force blast, thus weakening the Tarrasque every time with its own attacks, while they attempted to restrain it with all the other aspects that were going on. The other thing that I threw at them with a little bit of a curveball was that the device on the back of the Tarrasque was actually malfunctioning and was shooting out lightning bolts. So this was a Tarrasque with a small lightning storm mounted on the back of it that was just hitting them with random lightning bolts as the fight was going on. So while the Tarrasque is being distracted by the Spelljammer and the wagon, they had to run around and keeping it distracted, while Katsuki and Nuru got on the back of this thing to get Nuru into the capsule in order to complete the ceremony. And Katsuki had to be up there to fix it. So Nuru and Katsuki get on board, and they're working about this thing, trying to avoid getting electrocuted, which isn't going all that well. But they eventually get to it, and then they get the Tarrasque down to the level that it needs to, because the way that it worked was that once the Tarrasque was at a certain amount of hit points, Nuru would sit inside the capsule, and whatever hit points she had to sacrifice her own hit points to power the device. And if the Tarrasque had more hit points than what she did, it would drain her completely and kill her, and then they had to keep on wailing on it until it dropped to that level. So that was the power level that was required for getting this to actually hold the Tarrasque in place. So they couldn't put Nuru in the capsule immediately. They had to really hurt this thing. And with it attacking against them and with the kinetic blast going back at them, and the froghemoth wailing onto, gripping it with all four of its tentacles. And again, it was an absolutely epic fight, and they managed to pull it off. The biggest issue during this fight, though, was really for Selena, because she had lost all of her powers. When Atropus was destroyed, all her powers went away. So she essentially became a warlock without a patron. She became really just a fighter. But again, she was fine with that, and she relegated herself to utilizing her weapons and also piloting the wagon for this fight. But the battle went really, really well for them, and epic battle, just absolutely awesome, so much fun, and it was just an epic end to a fantastic campaign. And then for the epilogue, it was basically decided, because Give was completely dead at this stage, and Selena had decided that what her and her group had ended up doing to the multiverse by the removal of this stone cannot happen again. And so she had the Equinox, she had Darius, she had all of the constructs, and so she decided that this would be where she would spend the rest of her life. She was still effectively immortal, because a lot of the stuff that Atropus had done to her was still functional. Like, she was still technically a star spawn, so she couldn't die. She was immortal, but she just lost all of her magical powers. But because she was effectively immortal, and she had all the time to study, she committed herself to keeping the Apocalypse Stone and the Tarrasque safely secured. They actually transported the Tarrasque and the Equinox inside of a mountain and buried both of them. And so her ship and the Tarrasque were on the interior of a mountain, and this became known as the Citadel of Selena, where this final epic battle went down. This was actually the mountain where the Tarrasque was climbing up during the fight. And she turned herself over to becoming a wizard and retrained herself and became one of the most powerful wizards in legend, and protected the stone up until this day, into the current campaign. Nuru, pretty much she was just done with adventuring at this stage. She'd run away and hadn't gotten her anywhere, so she just retired for the most part, went about her ways, and everything that had happened to her, she just wanted to forget everything that she's done. She didn't want to be a hero, she didn't want to be a noblewoman, she just wanted to be a person. And now that everything was finally over, she was able to do that. So yeah, went from being, really, really epic and stressful to her, and she just decided to take the quiet life. Wallflower, pretty much decided to still was happy with her plan that she wanted to attempt to maintain life on the world, and so she left the Equinox and began wandering the world, planting Golthias trees wherever she found an area that she thought could use some sprucing up, and that has played quite heavily into our current campaign as well, because they're finding blighted forests wherever they go, because Wallflower has just covered the entire surface of this world with nothing but these vampiric trees. And that is really where the story ended. The party all went their separate ways. They had come through it all. They'd caused 3 individual apocalypses, or apocalypses, or apocalypse, however you want to say it. They fought back with great power, determination, and conviction. I'd say friendship, but it was more the circumstances that brought them together rather than them actually wanting to be together. They were, for the most part, I don't think they ever really saw themselves so much as friends as much as allies that just needed to complete a goal. But that was where the beginning ended. So, thank you all very much for sticking with me, if you have indeed stuck with me for this entire retelling of my first ever Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I have been your humble host, Tim. Please remember to like and subscribe, and come back when we'll begin up with a new series of stories in the next Tale of Woe. Bye!